Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the resurrection accounts in the Bible. We're focusing on the 7 incidents of personal resurrections, where an individual is being, who has just died, is being raised from the dead. And as we introduced these events yesterday, last time we were together, we mentioned that there are 7 in the Bible, 2 in the Old Testament before Jesus, 2 in the New Testament after Jesus, and then 3 by Jesus during his ministry. And we talked about the number 7 and about just the themes that run throughout and the way these accounts connect to each other. And we'll see that as we tell these stories too, a variety of ways they connect to each other. Elijah and Elisha in the Old Testament, Peter and Paul in the New, and then Jesus in the middle, 7 being a significant number, 3 being a significant number. One of the things I didn't mention last time we were together that connects these accounts together, at least the 4 who are not Jesus. Elijah, Elisha, Peter, and Paul all 4 of them performed their resurrections in an upstairs room. They all take place in the upper room, which probably has some significance. I'm not sure what it is. It's probably not allegorical. I'm sure we could all come up with lots of allegorical ways to interpret the upper room, but I have no idea, although I've thought about it a lot, exactly the significance, but it's a fact. They all 4 take place in an upper room. The first resurrection in the Bible is recorded in 1 Kings chapter 17, and we'll begin reading with verse 17. But let me set this up. This is Elijah. Moses is certainly the first man in history that's called a prophet, but in terms of the Old Testament prophets, those whose profession, those whose vocation it was to prophesy, Elijah is the first. He's a non-writing prophet, as is Elisha, but we have their stories, we have their history recorded in Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings. And of course, Elisha is Elijah's successor, trained by him. They could not have been more different in their dispositions. Elisha is quite dramatic, but he's also living during the days of Ahab and Jezebel, and his life is always being threatened. And this is one of those times he has to flee. He has declared to King Ahab that it's not going to rain for 3 years, and Ahab wants to kill him, and so he has to flee. For a while, he's staying at the brook of Cherith, and he's being fed by the ravens. But then he travels north, and he leaves Israel altogether. And by Israel, I mean the northern kingdom of Israel and Judah. He leaves the northern kingdom, goes north into Lebanon, to the area of Sidon, and he visits a widow named from the city of Zarephath. And this widow is at the end of her rope as well. She has a young son. They are completely impoverished. There's no way for them to fend for themselves, and they're going to. She's just going to die. They resign themselves to death. They have just a little oil and a little flour, and they're going to make that little bit, and they're just going to wait to die. When they meet Elijah, and Elijah asks her to make him a little cake, and she says, "I don't have anything. I just have this little bit, and my son and I were going to eat this and die, just wait for death because no one's there to take care of us." And Elijah said, "No, make it for me, and it'll be okay." And of course, then we have the miracle of the oil and the flour never running out, and it was never exhausted. And it is after these events that the widow's son dies, and Elijah has the opportunity of raising him from the dead. It came about after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became sick, and his sickness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. So she said to Elijah, "What do I have to do with you, O man of God? You have come to bring my iniquity to remembrance and to put my son to death. And he said to her, Give me your son. Then he took him from her bosom and carried him to the upper room where he was living and laid him on his own bed. And he called to the Lord, to Yahweh, saying, O Yahweh my God, you have also brought calamity to the widow with whom I am staying by causing her son to die? Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and called to the Lord, to Yahweh, and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's life return to him. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the life of the child returned to him, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, See, your son is alive. Then the woman said to Elijah, Now I know you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord, the word of Yahweh, that's interesting, is in your mouth. And there's so much here. And we know that we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. So the son dies, the son gets sick and dies, and she immediately blames Elijah for this. Why? Was she blaming a lot? Well, because she does. And she's also blaming herself because she's feeling guilty. You've come to bring my iniquity to remembrance. What is she talking about? We don't know, but she knows. And so Elijah just says, Give me your son. Carries him to the upstairs room. Probably that would have entailed climbing up a ladder to get to the rooftop shed on top of her little square house, her little cube of an adobe house, and to where he was living. So he's staying there and lays him on his own bed, stretches himself on the child 3 times. 3 is significant. He starts by sounding like he's blaming God too. Oh Lord, oh Yahweh my God, why did you bring calamity to the widow? Why did you cause her son to die? It's very demanding, and it's just so in keeping with Elijah, for whom everything is absolutely dramatic, and of course his life was dramatic. Stretches himself out 3 times upon the child. 3 is a significant number, and then he just asks, "Please give this child his life back." And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the child, and the life of the child returned to him, and he revived. So then Elijah brings him back to his mother. I've heard some posit that stretching himself out on the son was kind of like giving him, cardiac pulmonary resuscitation or something. I don't know. This is a miracle. It's a miracle that all acknowledge is a miracle. And when he carried that child up to the top room, he was dead. Now he's alive. He started to breathe whenever he prayed to God. God granted him that miracle. So this is a miracle. And it's interesting that in all these cases, the immediate result is faith. I'm a little, ambivalent about her answer, though. The woman said to Elijah, "Now I know you are a man of God, and that the word of Yahweh is in your mouth." She has faith in Elijah as being God's representative, and that the word of Yahweh is in your mouth. It seems like she's always believed in Yahweh, but now she knows that Elijah is a man of Yahweh. And yet they've already had the miracle, the oil and the flour. So I don't know what other hoops he had to jump through. I guess this one before she would believe that he was God's prophet. Okay, that's the first time it ever happened. We're going to see so much of what happens in this event repeated in some of the others. We're going to talk about Elisha's resurrection story next time. Thank you for joining me for what is now almost exactly 10 good minutes with the Word.